We live?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on, everybody? We are here. We are live.
Sorry about
Podcast
that.
hasn't begun, but we are. The live podcast has begun. That's what this is about, right? It's most likely my mom is watching. Hi, Mom. My
Hello.
volume. There you go.
Oh, I need to do
Oh,
sound check.
get mute.
Oh, you're peaked. Sorry.
Sound check.
Okay.
I'm
Tell
here.
me what you have for breakfast.
I had a blueberry muffin and a
Ooh.
coffee from McDonald's with 1 sugar and 1 cream.
I will
It was
never
delicious.
have coffee from McDonald's again.
Oh no!
I
Why?
had a really bad experience. It felt like it burnt my entire face off.
Oh,
I had to
that's
throw
not
it in the
good.
bin. It was
Did you throw it in?
horrible.
Like, did you drink it like a
With a
beer? Like
straw.
just yeah, like burnt your whole
I
face.
put 2 cups in a hat, and then
Yeah. Like was it like championship champagne? You're just like, how did you drink your coffee that your whole face
I was
burnt, Dave?
celebrating a Formula One win, and I just threw
That's
it
it.
over myself.
There you go. I get that reference. Love Formula One.
I've never sat through it. Not out of spite. Just never
That's
have.
okay.
Never have. It's all right if I grab a quick drink, because I'm hoarse.
Absolutely. I don't know if anyone is in the live with us,
I don't know.
but that's okay.
Yeah,
It's
won't
probably
be
just
long. I
Mom
won't be long.
watching. Hi, Mom. Send a text if you're watching, Mom. We are waiting for Dave to get a drink and come back. We are going live on the Omniverse Comics Guide. Didn't mean for that to rhyme. My mom is on. We're doing top 10 resurrections this week. I don't know if anyone is coming on, worried that we weren't live. They checked in and wasn't on, but that's okay. The show must go on. What is Dave coming back with? What kind of drink? I'm going to say a bottle of water in his red bottle. Yes, I'm sticking with that. Water. Or do you think he'll have a coffee? No, I said water and I'm going to stick with it. Where's probably coffee? It's late in England. I would want coffee. Maybe I'd want whiskey. 10:30 at night? Yeah, whiskey's good. Omega bread. No, I'm not flying solo tonight. Dave is just getting himself a drink. I wasn't sure if anybody was on, but now that you're on Omega bread, we could chit chat. How's it going? Omega is on. My mom is watching. She knows that you're on Omega bread. That's hilarious. Yes, we're doing top 10 resurrections tonight. That is the subject. We did top 10 deaths. I forgot when we did those. But why not do the flip side, right? He'll be on your bed. Yeah, it's just my mom, so we got to keep it clean for now. And I don't know if she understands most of the innuendos that we have in the chats, but it's all good. The bet is, oh, there's Dave. What kind of drink does he have? Is it a water or is it a coffee? What do you say, Omega? I said water. What's going on? Oh, congratulations,
Hello.
Dave. Congratulations is in order to Omega Bread
Whoa.
because his wife gave birth to their 3rd child
Dude,
on Monday.
leave her alone.
Yeah.
Like, that's enough. Come on.
Not last the entire stream.
Have you chosen a name?
Congratulations.
Have you named?
Yeah.
What have you chosen? Is it a boy or a girl? And if it's a boy, have you named him Eric or Dave? Tiernan, is it after the comedian? There's this comedian called Tommy Tiernan, and he does this great skit, and I'm trying to find it, and I can't find it. And it's just this bit where he talks about his Latin teacher. And he just goes, my Latin teacher... I won't have to edit this bit out. My Latin teacher was a fucking fucker. And that's what he says over and over again. And you know why he did it? You know why he did it? Because he was a fucking fucker. And every time he tells a bit, there's a skit about it, and it keeps going through this thing, and all these things his Latin teacher did, and it always ends every time with that same line, and it just gets funnier.
That's great. Yeah, I like those. When comedians have their little intricacies that only they can do, like it's funny because they do that. Like no one else could copy or mimic. I like that. That's great.
It is.
So we got Omega Bread in the house. Yeah.
We have. Sorry, I thought I saw something else pop up, and it was me.
That was you. Yeah.
We've got Omniverse.
Oh, wait, we got Omni Eric.
Hey, how's it going, man? Right. Have you had any children?
No children this week. It was 50-50 between Tiernan and Logan. Final say, so no comic book related names allowed.
Both my kids have comic related names. If we'd had a boy, it was going to be Logan.
Yeah.
But we went with Lorelei after the Thor character.
Nice.
And Lex. Say no more.
She's
got great battle armor.
I'm always tempted
Baby's first battle armor.
Yeah, I want to name my dogs after characters.
Yeah.
I want it. Yeah, I want a yellow lab just so I could dress him up as Crypto forever. Just I'd always keep a red cape on him with the little collar with the Superman. I wouldn't even put Crypto on his collar. I just put a Superman S.
Yeah.
And on his cape, it would say his information stitched in. But I'd keep the cape on him all the time. Or same dog, name him Thor. Same deal, keep the cape on all the time. Right? I don't know.
I had a dog named after a comic character. It was Bigby, named after Bigby Wolf from Fables.
Yeah, that's good.
So that was a spaniel, but he wasn't any remotely wolf-like pet. But yeah, we named him Bigby.
Nice.
Otherwise, it's always been like bands and stuff and film references.
Yeah, there's that too. You got to give your dog a funny, like not a funny name, but something that you can only name a dog. Right?
Yeah. Although there was someone I knew who had a boxer, really big boxer, called Dave, and she brought him into work, and he was really misbehaving, and I'm trying to get past him to get out of the office, and she just went, "Dave, behave yourself," and I was like, "Oh, sorry," like it was so authoritative. Yes.
It is kind of funny though when people name their dogs after like they just give them names. Like a imagine. This is my dog, Scott. Scott, get over here. It's just funny.
Derek, right, mate, come here. Derek comes over and it's like a Dachshund. How do you pronounce that?
Right. I call it a Dachshund.
Is it Dachshund?
I don't know.
I don't know either. But let's say Weimaraner. Do 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 Weimaraner.
All right, should we waste no more time and get into the app?
Let's do it. Again,
all right.
I've got very big hair, so apologies.
No apologies needed. We're going to do the countdown. Whoever joins. Everyone who's here, thank you for being with us. Here we go. 4, 3, 2, 1, and... Welcome, everybody, to the Omniverse Comics Guide podcast. We are your Omniverse Comics Guide guys. I'm Eric. That's my buddy Dave on the other side. Hey, Dave, how are you doing, buddy?
I'm fine, thank you, buddy. Eric?
Everybody that's tuned in on Twitch, our usual suspects, thank you for joining us. Feel free to chime in on the chats. People that are watching on the YouTube, we hope you enjoyed the show. The production quality is second to none. My friend Dave is the graphic designer and everything you see happening right now. Most likely he's adding all these kinds of effects from my fingers as we speak. That's Dave for you. And everyone listening on the podcast platforms where you're just listening on the train or in your car, don't forget to hit the rate and subscribe button for us. It always helps to get the word out there. Give us a thumbs up if you like it. Tell us what we could do better. And of course, omniversecomics.guide, where you could go for all your reading orders, reviews, all of our podcasts, videos, interviews, collector's item specials. It's there. And it's getting better and better every month.
I hope so.
Because of that guy right there.
No.
Dave.
Team.
What's new and exciting in your life, my friend?
Oh, man. Nothing. How about you, dude? What's going on?
Well, other than the weather today being a pain in the butt, it wasn't a nice day today at all. I am trying to keep my spirits up by currently reading Captain Marvel, the Genis Vale omnibus from Peter David.
The envy. Oh, I saw you post some of the stuff in the Discord. Join our Discord.
Yeah. Join the Discord. That's right. I never shut out the Discord. Join the Discord. I did. Peter David's a funny guy, and he has a lot of these adult innuendos in the book that you're thinking to yourself, this must have been written for teenage boys during this era, because there's stuff here.
It's written for full-grown adult males. it's fine.
Gotta be.
It's still funny.
It's still funny for sure. But on the Discord, in our panels out of context, there's a couple of things that I notice, and I'm like, that'll be funny to share, won't it? And some of them are quite ridiculous. But
what issue are you on? Just out of curiosity, you might not remember. I was curious how far. There's a really great moment. I'm wondering if you hit it yet.
12-13.
Okay, maybe.
I'm early.
Have you got split weight in Marlo's comic shop? Marlo runs a comic shop, and someone takes it over. That's one of my favorite bits.
It's a great That's the thing too, is that I'm finding that if I were to have picked an issue of this up randomly at a comic shop when it was being published, I don't know if I would have stuck with it, because the payoff makes me want to go back and read everything. Yeah. So there's sometimes I'm reading like a plot line that might go through a couple of issues, and I'm kind of like, this character, I don't like what, why, get on with it already. What are we doing with this character? And then when you kind of get to that ending of that storyline, you're just like, oh, I'm going to read all of that. Knowing what I know now, I'm going to read it all, paying more attention. Yeah. And it's
very
just
smart. It's very nicely laid out.
Yeah. And there's something to be said about the synergy that Peter David has with his artists. In this case, it's been crisscross. Yeah. Mostly.
Yeah, that's
doing
right.
This stuff. So, and I see that, I don't know how much he did in it, but Ivan Race is on the second half of the series, because it goes to issue 0 to 35, and then 1 to 25. So it's packed with comics, this omnibus.
It's a lot.
It's really,
Well, they tried to cancel it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they had to fight for it. So it was in the You Decide thing, which I think we mentioned in an episode a little while ago. So it was competing with Bill Jemis's book. But Bill Jemis's book didn't win, but because he was in charge of Marvel, he still produced it anyway. It was called Marvel, and it was one of the worst comics I've ever read in my life. It was so bad.
So far I'm enjoying it, and I like that. What I've read from Peter David in big swaths, like the Incredible Hulk, X Factor, and now I'm delving into the Captain Marvel. He's able to change the tone of his books and fit them for what needs to be done. Like even with Spider-Man 2099 that I've read, he just does a really good job of adapting his writing style as well, not just plots and this and that and how he lets the artist do panels. It's even like, is this the same guy?
Yeah.
Because X Factor it's different. Like it's
the common theme is the humor.
Yes, the humor definitely.
That's
for sure.
And the way that he does transitions, like scene transitions, where they flow logically. So someone will mention something and then it'll jump to the next scene and it'll be a reference to the previous scene. If you see what I mean?
Yeah. I get what you mean. You even if there's times where I have felt a little bit like, okay, there's a lot of going on, because one minute I'm on Earth and then the next minute I'm in whatever happens to Rick Jones, where they switch spots.
Yeah.
Right? Rick
Negative
Jones and Marvel.
Zone?
They go,
is this still the negative zone in that series?
A couple of things are changing in regards to that.
Right.
That's right. So it's a drastic scene change, but when I'm like not paying attention, I go back and I'm like, okay, it makes perfect sense. I'm just not paying attention. You're right. It's a good transition, scene transition. Anyways,
can you do me one favor?
We're not talking.
I'm just gonna. Sorry, my light. I didn't adjust my lights before we started. Sorry.
No problem. He asked me for a favor. I don't got to do anything. It's all good. There you go. Oh, look at you. No? I think we got it.
Sorry.
Did we get it?
I think so. It's going to have to be.
You're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. You look great.
Thank you. Stop, you big flirt.
So,
that'll be a natural transition.
Right? So this week, our top 10, it's going to be the opposite of our last year's episode, top 10 deaths. It's going to be the resurrections.
Yeah.
We may or may not be referring back to some of those characters who died in our top 10 deaths. But as the top 10 deaths says, you know what happens, right?
Yeah.
But we're not going to tell you how. We'll just tell you where you can find it, because we don't want to spoil the experience of what makes that entire story special.
What, the resurrection?
Yeah.
I figure we should just go for it.
Yeah? Just spoil the hell out of it?
Well, this is what I was thinking. Like, so if we do it, let's just do it, because then we can properly talk about it. But if we say that we're going to spoil, this is the thing we're going to talk about. What's he said?
If Jesus is number one, I'm unsubscribing immediately.
Oh, shit. We've lost a subscriber.
That was my first pick.
But yeah, we'll say what period or storyline or series it's coming from, and we'll, that if you're going to read that and you don't want it to be spoiled, then don't read it, and then we'll go from there. And then if people want to skip, they can skip.
Fair enough. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
That's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Stick around for a good time or skip ahead if you don't want it to be spoiled.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay. Your turn to go number one. Sorry, take a sip. There you go. Screenshot
Should you use
that.
caster sugar in coffee? That's all we've got in the house. Was that bad for you?
I don't know. What's caster sugar?
I have no idea. I found it in a cupboard, in the baking cupboard. I'm probably going to look like a cake by the end of this.
We'll see. Let's see what happens.
If I end up with a candle on my head at the end, then we'll know it's gone hideously wrong. Okay. My number one.
Okay.
To kick us off.
I
will start us by saying I'm not a big fan of resurrections. I'm not a big fan of characters coming back from the dead. Death should mean death. I don't like it when they kill a character off, especially just to bring them back, which I find really cheap. Part of the reason why I didn't like the Krakoa era of X-Men and struggled with it was just the constant resurrections. Like, it means death isn't the threat. I know that there are ways around, and I'm sure it was very good, and they found ways to make it good, but it bothers me. I'm not a fan. So for me, it's got to be done either really, really well. It's got to explain how it isn't a death, or there's just got to be some kind of logic to it. It's got to make perfect sense. So my number one choice for this week's, for my first resurrection, is Thanos, because it makes perfect sense for Thanos not to stay dead. So Thanos was killed off in Marvel 2-in-1 Annual number 2, and he was killed fighting the Avengers, The Thing, Spider-Man, and ultimately Adam Warlock did him in. It was Adam Warlock's ghost with smoke pouring from his genitalia area. Yes, I don't think that's quite how it happened. It was kind of he came out of the soul gem.
Is saying no. It's a great story.
But they had to hide his bits somehow. It's a brilliant story. So the death there is brilliant. I don't think we did talk about him from a death perspective last time, but it's brilliant. It's really well told. So to have such a good climax, steady, and then to bring the character back, it's got to be good. So it was. So they brought him back in Silver Surfer number 34 in 1990. So that's a gap of 13 years, which doesn't sound that long. When you think like, okay, what was happening in comics 13 years ago? It was 2011. That was post Dark Reign for Marvel. And it was the New 52 era for DC. I think that was 13 years ago. Yeah.
I think the difference, though, is that comics weren't restarting back then.
No.
So when something happened, those 13 years was a large chunk of Marvel history up to that point, right? Because they weren't a 60-year-old company either. So for that character to not have been around for a while, it may have felt like the bow or the story had been
Yeah,
told, and that's what it was.
and
So it
plus,
meant something when he came back.
yes, and they didn't tend to bring characters back. So when they did the Book of the Dead, and I'll reference that a little bit later again, when they did the Book of the Dead pages and issues of the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, those characters were dead. They were dead. That was the end of those characters. I think if anything, they might have characters that kind of come from them, like Nebula. Thanos not being around led to Nebula coming out of the woodwork and like claiming to be his granddaughter, but never being confirmed, and all that kind of stuff. So in Silver Surfer 34, it's so weird. Silver Surfer has a dream, and in the dream, he's on this planet and he goes to sleep. It's the first time he's slept in ages, like decades or hundreds of years. And in the dream, he goes in this cave, and in the cave, there's this rat guy and a zombie dude, and then they unleash Thanos' soul because Death's ordered it, and then he comes out as a floaty head, and then they have a little tussle in there, some laser blasting, and he goes outside, and it's just weirder. And there's like a zombie woman trying to throw a baby in a volcano, and I am literally spoiling everything. It's almost page by page. And then the baby thing tries to attack him when he saves it. It's just a bizarre thing. So he has this weird dream, and he wakes up and he basically goes, "Oh, I wonder what that meant. That was weird." And then he's got someone says to the side, it was something like maybe it was a prophecy. And last page, there's Thanos sat in his floaty chair, his little armchair, and that was his return. It might not seem like much, but I mean, that being like, it's a bizarre issue, but it was written by Jim Starlin, who created the character, or at least co-created the character, and he was then back to write it. The art was by Ron Lim, but it was written by Jim Starlin, so Starlin was bringing back Thanos. That was Starlin's first issue, I think, and then the villain he chose to have the Surfer go up against was his creation, the big bad of the 1970s. So what a great comeback. And then I think from the reason why it's a great resurrection for me isn't so much the resurrection itself, which is surreal. It's what comes of it. So what comes of that then is like his mission is to wipe out 50% of the population of the universe. Yes, it's a great cover. Thank you, Omega Bread. It is a brilliant cover. It's iconic. Thanos is looking angular and mean, and the Surfer's little flying in front of him. You don't see covers like that much. I just don't think they do covers the same way anymore. Those are the days. Yeah. So the Surfer has to look into who he is, and ultimately they have like a final battle in part 5 of this story arc, and then Thanos goes off to get the Infinity Gems, and then he comes back and he builds the Infinity Gauntlet, and then it leads into the Infinity Gauntlet event. I mean, if that's not how to bring back a villain, I don't know what is. That's probably for me I've kind of opened with the best resurrection for me, because when it comes down to it, the villain resurrections are the ones that make most sense. It's a real comic tradition to have villains come back and often not explain how or why they died. Like the Joker used to come back all the time. So there's probably multiple choices for I don't want to spoil anything for you there, dude, but from your side, but the it's just something a lot of villains do. Doctor Doom will die and come back. And there'll be a reason. And sometimes it doesn't feel like there's a reason at all.
Yeah, I felt like more a variety of characters in the sense of villain and heroes came to mind when I thought of Marvel, whereas with DC, and I'm probably just not thinking in terms of villains that have come back, but I think more of the heroes in DC.
Huh. Yeah.
And I don't know if it
Weirdly,
has to do with the way the mythologies are explored within the two universes. Like even just the basis of the characters. Like naturally in Marvel, there are characters that are deities, that are superheroes, Thor and Hercules and you name it. But in DC, it seems like they're all representative of mythological figures.
Yeah.
In some capacity, right? There's that godliness
kind of pantheon aspect to it.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. So I feel like those heroes' deaths and resurrections come to mind more. But like you said, Marvel, some of their villains are just as interesting and consequential in the characters and the universe's life.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Great pick.
Cheers, mate.
I like that. Okay, well, I'm not going to stray too far from Jim Starlin. I'm
Ooh.
going to select something from Jim Starlin's bibliography, and that would be Robin, Jason Todd.
Oh man.
So the reason I bring up Jim Starlin is because he famously or infamously was the writer of the Death in the
Of
Family, not
course.
of the family, Death in the Family, where the reading audience got to decide what would happen to Jason Todd Robin, because the issue was written in a way that was left open. It was very plausible that he wasn't going to make it out of this one if we're just using storytelling logic. But then, of course, it's comic book logic, and if you need to, we write a way that he lives,
Yeah.
right? Maybe he's just very badly injured. But the fans decided. Spoilers. The story is called Death in the Family, but Jason Todd dies, and one of the more famous or infamous Joker murders, or right, this one he is brutal, even for a comic book of the 80s that is under the comics code, and you don't
Yeah.
really see what you don't see makes it more effective
It's very
in a way.
Greek theatre, isn't it? In that way.
Yes,
Like,
yes,
don't show it. Just like imply
exactly.
it and describe it.
Yeah, exactly. So that story is found in Batman 426, 429, and it's picked up. I'm not sure how many years later, but probably similar to that time span of when Thanos was away from the page. Might be more. Might be
Might be
like 20
more.
years. Yeah, might be closer to 20 years. And I'm not exactly sure officially when Jason Todd's return really is, because it says that he comes back in Batman 638 where he reveals himself.
Oh, steady.
But I would say this, just even as a Batman starter kit, just for funsies, this has always been my cheat code. Death in the Family, Hush, Under the Hood. You get a real full Jason Todd. It gives you everything you need to know of what makes this character tick.
Yeah.
Granted, how they figured out a way to make him come back in the comics is but it's comic book logic, right?
It's mainstream superhero comic book logic, at least, yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
And it doesn't bother me so much because it's a ridiculous outcome needs to be done in like a very implausible, like, yeah, if that's how something completely impossible were to happen, it should happen through impossible causes.
Well, essentially, it acts as a prelude of sorts to Infinity. What was it called? Infinite Crisis.
Infinite Crisis, exactly.
So there were. I think it's just probably. I think the reason why people may not have been as keen on it because like during the 80s and 90s, Batman didn't really interact with the DC universe in that way. Like if you wanted to see him interacting with the DC universe, you had to buy Justice League or you had to see his guest appearances. But for the most part, the Bat books were standalone. There might be the occasional issue, like there was an issue of No Man's Land with Superman in it, but how rare is that? You know, it didn't happen often.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you're right.
for it to something to be affected by such a bizarre, I mean, so I think we should say what it is. But it was so it was was it Superman or Superboy's punch, Superboy Prime punch reality?
Superboy's punch. Yeah. Reality punch. I mean, when you put it in those simple terms and reduce it to what it is, it's stupid. But when you think about the whole concept of where these characters are in this pocket little thing for what they gave up, this sort of like quasi heaven, if you're going to mess with the DC universe reality, I guess that's where you would do it.
Yeah.
In the storytelling realm of DC universe, right?
Uh-huh.
It's
Why not?
dumb,
It doesn't
but
matter.
yeah,
It
if
doesn't
that's how we're
matter.
gonna.
Have fun.
And there's been variations of how, like in the animated Under the Hood
Yeah.
cartoon,
Is that different?
great adaptation. It's different because they use Lazarus Pit,
Oh.
which makes sense as well, right? Depending on how you,
In some ways, probably more sense.
yeah, especially in Batman terms. So I think I could be wrong, and you'd have to check me on this, so don't take my word for it necessarily, but I think when they told the story of how Jason Todd came back, it was after he had been reintroduced, and I think they gave like a post explanation. Like I don't think it happened concurrently with Infinite Crisis. I could be wrong though. It's almost like Infinite Crisis happened, so we'll use that event to explain.
I can't remember. I think it's just
Could be
before.
wrong.
I think it is before, but it's very
Okay, okay,
close. I could be wrong. I've not hit
okay,
that point yet, but I have put the
okay,
stories in order so I can read them when I get there. And off the top
okay,
of my head, I think it's before
okay.
or
Good to know.
or tight.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if the placement of how they explained that was kind of like backdoor, sort of like, and because this happened, we can sort of use this caveat.
Maybe it was.
But I could be wrong. So if you've put it in order, then you probably are on top of it
It was
more
a
than my
while ago.
memory.
What
It's okay.
the one thing I was going to ask about it was like, because obviously when they did the new 52 and they relaunched everything, some of those things changed because Infinite Crisis technically then didn't happen, but the character was still
Yeah,
the
I
Red
get.
Hood. So I don't know if he was from a Lazarus pit as well, because I just can't remember. I read those stories, but it was a while ago, and off the top of my head, I can't remember. We'll have a look.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's a good question. It is weird, but hey, DC Comics, multiverse, blah blah blah. But the character again, having been somebody that it almost feels, to make a wrestling reference, it almost feels like a
You?
wrestling me, a wrestling character who was like a heel that the people didn't want to like him. A heel is
Oh,
like a villain.
okay.
So like Jason Todd Robin was disliked to the point where the fans were like, kill him off. Like we don't like him as Robin. So
Mm,
much so that we're willing to let Robin die. That's how much we didn't like this kid being Robin. Whereas now Red Hood is a mainstay character. Like
yeah,
but
it's
he's
funny.
actually, yeah, he's more intense and like a vigilante than any of them are. But now he's more like, but when he was a kid being Robin, it was like, kill that bitch. Like screw this kid. Now he's come back and he kills people. They're like, keep him. This guy's badass.
Wow. Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. Although, oh, hang on. What have we got here? Oh, God, hang on. Ignore that bit. Right.
Yeah.
Omega Bread has very usefully thrown in that I think he means the new 52, they use a mishmash of hypertime ripples from Superboy's punch and then a Lazarus pit, which made him stronger and more violent than before. Was that, which reality was that? Hang on, this further down. After initially being resurrected by the punch ripple, he was found and taken in by Raz and Talia, who then dunked him into a Lazarus pit. The Russian bots are back. So yes, the Russian bots are back. That's part of it.
so
The Russian bots are back.
so it's a combination then.
So you can kind
Okay.
of pick and choose what you want to believe then, I guess. Oh, they did that rewrite mini-series, didn't they? Because that was in the Under the Hood's deluxe edition.
It's like back matter of the
Yeah,
traits where they kind of like show you, well, here's how we did it. Here's how he came back in case you're wondering, because it's never really explained in the Batman comics. But anywho, regardless, it's such a good, not redemption, that's not the right word, but a story of vengeance,
yeah,
because because there's a lot to talk about between the characters involved, and that's some of the best. Like Judd Whitting wrote the story of Under the Hood, but Jason wanting to know what Batman's motivations are and why in regards to the Joker,
mm.
and putting him on the spot. Those are the things that you, as a comic book reader, you get invested in. What makes these characters tick? What makes them break?
Hmm.
And that was the thing in Batman's life up to that point, where it's like, this is my ultimate failure. One of my adopted sons died under my watch,
Yeah,
and it completely changed how he would proceed in the rest of his career as a superhero, right?
yeah.
It changed him,
And like,
you
how
know.
does the
So
Red Hood then react to Tim Drake, and how does the Red Hood react when he runs into the Joker next, and blah 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 blah. Blah.
yeah, and it's almost like being given a chance to see what became of you after me. What did my death mean? They have that sort of conversation, which is like, yeah, I want to hear that. The what if scenario. It's intense. It's
That's
really
cool.
good.
That's a good
So
choice,
that's my
man.
number one pick.
Just to confirm, actually, it was Red Hood: The Lost Years. Omega Bread's reminding us there. Red Hood: The Lost Years was the miniseries. That series is collected recently in Batman Under the Red Hood Deluxe Edition, which is it's more than the trades, so it's like a much bigger. It's an expansion on that origin.
Nice.
It's like a 6-8 issue mini.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
That's
worth
something
picking
worth
up.
checking out.
And some
Okay.
people say it's
Yeah,
not
it's worth it.
great. I haven't read it yet, but if you want answers, that's where to find them.
I love that storyline.
I need to read it again. It's been a long time. Oh, my mouse has died again.
Doug Monkey on the art.
Oh God, it was
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I'm sorry, man. My mouse has died again.
It's okay.
Sorry, we've been having a few technical problems, and
Yeah.
this is one of them. My mouse is just a bell end. Nope. Okay, I'm just gonna have to fly with it. I can't scroll up to my notes.
Oh no.
Hang on 1 second. Okay. No. Oh. Right. Bear with me. Do you want a song?
Yeah.
No. Oh, it's working. You don't get a song.
There we go.
Sorry. No songs tonight. Next time.
I was ready to dance.
Okay. So, my number 2 for tonight, and this is spoilers if you're gonna read Ed Brubaker's Captain America run. And that mentioning that in itself is a spoiler. So, of course, I'm going to be talking about the Winter Soldier. So, Captain America's sidekick, because Marvel aren't sidekick people. Sidekicks were very much a DC thing. There were sidekicks for World War II characters for pre-Marvel. They weren't even called Marvel at that point. It was Atlas or various other company names for a while. But Bucky was Captain America's sidekick. And most people will know this because of the Winter Soldier film, but it was done very differently in there because Bucky was the soldier, whereas in the old school Golden Age comics, Bucky Barnes was essentially he was like a runaway kid. Like he was a kid that was accompanying the troops into the front lines of the war. And
He's
then
the original Jason Todd.
he is kind of the original Jason Todd, right? So wow, nice. Oh. And there's some parallels there as well because I think those storylines were happening at the same time, which is super weird.
Right.
So, and the interesting thing with this one as well, so Bucky and Cap actually continued, their stories continued in the Captain America series, and he continued past World War II. When they launched the Marvel Universe, and not that they kind of went, here's the Marvel Universe launching with Fantastic Four #1. It was very much, here's Fantastic Four #1. What happens now? There was no real plan. But they launched Avengers. It was all the main characters that had their own titles, like Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, Ant-Man, Wasp. Weird bunch of characters. And then they find Captain America in an iceberg. And so this is like one of the biggest, earliest retcons. And they changed, it's retroactive continuity, if people aren't familiar with the term. They changed history so that Cap, just before the end of World War II, Cap was trying to stop Baron Zemo from launching it's like a weird experimental plane stroke missile thing towards England, and then he jumped on it. Him and Bucky both jumped on it heroically. Risky move. You got a shield, mate. Chuck that. So they jumped on it, and then Bucky's sleeve got caught. It's like, oh, just tear it off. It's fine. Oh, I'll get in trouble.
just tear it off. It's fine.
Seriously,
that's
but
funny. Just tear it off.
It doesn't matter, mate. We'll stitch it. It'll be all right. We'll get you a new one, mate. Right. So
Cap on the plane. It's okay. Just pull it. We'll jump.
he knows he's going to be on the plane back with Cap. The Cap's going to look so annoyed because he spent weeks stitching that outfit for him. sorry,
hilarious.
Cap. I would rather you died, Buck. To be honest, that was the alternate universe version. Anyway, so Bucky does stay on it. The thing explodes, and Bucky apparently dies. So that was revealed in a flashback sequence in 1964 in Avengers #4. And Bucky and Uncle Ben were the two characters, at least from the Marvel Universe, you categorically don't bring back. Like, no way.
Touch 'em.
So the mere mention of this being a story about bringing back Bucky was... It was one of those things that seemed to incite a lot of rage from that area of comic fans. I wanted to see it play out. because I read some of Brubaker's other stuff, and he's a great writer, and he'd already established himself as a great writer by 2005, and that's when Captain America #1 was launched. It was around the New Avengers period, so Cap and Iron Man got new #1s, they got their own new titles, and they were the only two members of the original, or at least early days Avengers, who were in the new series. So that's when Spidey, Spider-Woman, Luke Cage, all those other characters joined. But Cap needed a bit of refreshing. So on jumps Ed Brubaker, Steve Epstein doing the art, and they do the thing you don't do. And they have an assassin kill the Red Skull. And like, that's not, okay, the Red Skull's been killed a couple of times in the past. Like, okay. It's not about that. And it's like, the pieces start to come together. So Bucky does appear in the first issue, but he's kind of shadowed. And then there are these rumors floating around, and he appears again in #3, but again in shadow. He doesn't, it's not actually revealed until issue 6, where you see him in full. He's got a straggly hair, he's got the kind of domino mask, and he's got the metal arm. And Sharon Carter goes, I think it's Bucky. And you go like, what? Like, shiver, I get a shiver now thinking about it. It's nuts. It's like, it's a comic, mate. It's a comic. What are you doing? It was one of those things that hooked me completely. And then that storyline goes on to like issue 14 as you're trying to figure out, is it Bucky? Isn't it Bucky? And we know now, especially since they made the Winter Soldier into a film, that yeah, I mean, it's Bucky. But wow, what a ride. And the thing is, even when it hits 14, you go, okay, where are we going to take it now? Is it going to be a redemption arc? Sort of is, but not in the way we think. And this is why it's a great resurrection. It's not just the way they turned Cap into a spy series. It was like a Black Ops spy series in many ways, with a mystery. It's like, whoa, this is a whole different thing for Captain America. How cool is this?
Yeah, because Captain America is very swashbuckling.
For the most part,
right?
it's a classic superhero book. Occasionally he'll do jobs for S.H.I.E.L.D., but even then it's like, it's not necessarily spy stuff. It's a dude in a red, white, and blue pair of pajamas, with little wings on his nut. Like, yeah, it's not going to be. Don't tell anyone I'm here. I'm incognito. With his little wings.
It was full-on pure Marvel Comics magic when you had a really great Captain America story. Bright American flag running. And not to say that Ed Brubaker's stuff isn't patriotic. It very much is, but it's also got that paranoia that who do you trust? Because Cap, you realize, no, he works for a government agency. He knows a lot of things that would frighten us. And top of the fact he's an Avenger. Yeah. Like...
And those connections to S.H.I.E.L.D. really play in as well, like with Sharon involved, and it's really smart. But that's in terms of it being a great resurrection as well. The last thing you think is going to happen, Civil War kicks off, Cap's an outlaw, Civil War ends, no Cap anymore. Who takes over as Cap? No, come on, the assassin guy that came back from the dead. So what the hell? It's the twists and turns in that run, especially the main run, as it goes from the beginning of that series up to Captain America Reborn miniseries. It's incredible. It's a near perfect run of comics, superhero comics or otherwise. It's so good. I mean, the end bit is very blockbustery with a ton of characters in it. But in terms of, again, just focusing on the resurrection, it's a rule breaker. It's the most untouchable thing. You don't do it. And that's where, like, doing something like this has to be really, really good. And it has to matter. And it's both. And he does it so well.
Yeah, 100%. It's it lives up to all the hype that surrounds it. I'd be hard pressed to find somebody who doesn't think it's a good film. Like it's one of the yeah, I know. You got that joke now too, right? It made me I did a spit take. This guy. But yeah, it lives up to all the hype. Great pick. It would have been on my list as well. For sure. Love that. Love that storyline. I can't wait to reread it.
Yeah, likewise. I've really looked forward.
Can't wait.
I read it to Misha when she was pregnant. And it was just like, what's happening next? What do you want tonight? Can you read some of Captain America? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like,
right?
When she was pregnant, it was great because I just got to read comics to her, and that was one of them.
Great book. Yeah. Great pick.
Thank you.
Definitely. Big thumbs up to Ed Brubaker for that entire run. It was quite a feat. Okay. Speaking of resurrections and feet,
Is it a Rob
I'm gonna
Liefeld
go.
character?
No, but it is a quick-footed character, and it's the Flash
Oh,
character who's famously sacrificed themselves for the better of the entire universe. But in this case, it's the resurrection of Wally West,
oh,
or him being brought back, not Barry Allen. And it's not so much that everything that they do with this character, like a lot of the stuff we've listed, there's a lot of aftermath, and the aftermath of Wally West being brought back. I'm not 100%, but I've heard enough from Heroes in Crisis that there's a lot of disappointment in the direction that they went. I haven't read it. I started to, and then I kept hearing it's sort of half and half things. And I
yeah,
didn't want to get upset. I didn't want to read a comic that would make me upset.
yeah.
So I will stick with the Rebirth one shot. I think it was 80 pages, and it was just again, similar to the Jason Todd and Bruce conversation, seeing Barry and Wally have that reunion after so much time, and Wally having to kind of come out of the shadow of Barry Allen's sort of sacrifice. And the way it was written, thankfully by great writers along the way, a lot of people, Wally West became their Flash,
Mm,
the one that really made that lightning bolt matter to a lot of fans. And even in the DC universe, like he became a key character.
yeah.
So for him and Barry to be reunited after, I think it was 30 plus years, or maybe around 30 years, 32 years up until that point,
Because if it's Rebirth, so it was like, yeah, what?
2016,
It's 90s, 2000s. Yeah, 30 years.
about 30 years,
Yeah,
right? Now I know that in the Flash book they would have like they would meet up and they would have conversations, or you would have like references. Of course, it's not to, but this was different. This was like, you remember me moments. It's
yeah,
me, because certain characters after New 52 were altered, changed, restylized in a way.
yeah,
And in this case, it was that reunion of the two classic characters, the kid and his idol, his mentor, his uncle, whatever it was. And in a lot of ways, Barry Allen's best friend.
yeah,
It was so touching. So just for the reunion of it, there's like it's cathartic. It like
yeah.
scratches that sort of itch of, if I could just have that moment with that person.
I think
It does it perfectly.
of that run, because that was the Joshua Williamson run, wasn't it? It then led into, I think it was Rebirth, and then
Led
it was the
into,
Williamson run. That was
yeah.
probably the best issue, which is a way unfortunate because it should have. I mean, that's a great opener, and then it
Mhm.
should have kind of gone from there, but it didn't. But that was a really great issue. They were reunited though, briefly at least, if I remember rightly, um, before Flashpoint, because Barry Allen came back when Wally was still the Flash.
Yes. Yeah,
But
they
I don't
do.
know the ins and outs.
Yeah, it's not so much because Wally didn't really die when the New 52 started. He
He
just
just
didn't
wasn't
really
included.
exist. He
Yeah,
wasn't included. So this moment, it's more like a timeline has been readjusted, where this character who didn't exist anymore comes back into existence, and a person's memory is jogged. Like you've come back to life. And
yeah,
that reunion with the Titans team was like, this is great. That Titans book, for first couple of trades that I read, I quite liked it. I forgot who wrote it though.
oh, so they put
The
Wally in that
Rebirth stuff.
team.
Yeah, while he was on that team,
Ah,
reunited with his Titans brethren. So it was very like, back to that nod to the classic. It's like
yeah,
Dick Grayson and Wally West and
yeah, the
Donna
original
Troy. Like, I
new
don't know
Teen
if Donna Troy
Titans.
was on the team. Yeah, the original. That's right. You're right.
Because the current, incidentally, I've been reading Tom Taylor's Titans, and that he's in there as well. So he's back, and I think he's got his own series written by Cy Spurrier, which is being fairly well received. So the current Flash, in terms of like the resurrection meaning something, the current Flash at the moment in the series, in his solo title, is Wally West. He's back being the Flash again.
Cool. That's great.
Yeah.
That's so cool to see.
So I'm
Yeah, I'm
I'm
so
intrigued
out of
to read
touch.
it more now.
I'm so out of touch with where DC is universe wise. Like I'm not opposed to reading anything. I just don't know what the status quo is. And from what I've understood in the my peripheral is that every sort of everything happened. Everything counted,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, or at the very least, you can pick what didn't, and get on with your life.
Something like that.
You know,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
I think is like fine. Deal
Get
with it.
on
No
with it.
one
Let's
remembers
go.
no one knows everything. No one's read everything. Just go with it.
Right. Exactly.
Ah,
So that's my number two.
it's a great choice. When you said it, I could visualize that page when they're reunited.
Yeah.
Omega Bread, apart from filth, he did say Dan Abnett wrote the Titans Rebirth title.
That's right. That's right. That's why I picked it up.
Yeah, I want to go back and read that now.
Nice shout. Thank you. Who shared that with us? Was Omega Bread?
That was Omega Bread,
Omega Bread. Thank you.
our backup brain for the night.
Yeah, the supreme intelligence for tonight. All right. You're number three.
My
Take it away,
number
Dave.
3 for tonight is I'm going back to villains.
Do it.
This was a really, really controversial one when it happened. So if you haven't read the Clone Saga, this is going to spoil it. You know, just the fact that it happened in 1990. Oh, I have written it down. I didn't write that down. The fact that it happened in 1996 is irrelevant. There will still be people who haven't read it. Some people weren't even alive then. But this was the climax. God, I love that word. This was the climax of the Clone Saga. So this is a big spoiler for that. The resurrection in question is Spider-Man's essentially his main bad guy, which is the Green Goblin. It's Norman Osborn, comes back at the end of the Clone Saga. So Norman kills off. He does the worst possible thing. He kills off his girlfriend, Gwen Stacy, in Amazing 121. But then instead of have him hanging around for a while and be able to kind of milk that he's done that, the next issue they kill him off as well. Like, it was a pretty major time.
Very.
So they did a two-part.
And it lasted.
It lasted, and that. Oh, damn it! I didn't write it down. It's in the 70s.
I think it was 72.
Check. Was it 72? Hang on.
I feel it was 72. I don't know why.
While we've knowing I'll have to edit this later. Sorry, I'm very unpro.
Okay.
I was super prepared, and then I had the technicals. 73. You did better than me. I was thinking it was a bit later. So you were super close. So it's 1973, and it's that's when Amazing Spider-Man 122 comes out. The final battle is very similar to the one they have in the first Tobey Maguire film.
Very.
Yeah, it's basically panel for panel on screen where the Goblin Glider goes through him. Jump ahead to 1996. Was it 96? Norman comes back. I've written down that it's Peter Parker Spider-Man 75. It's actually not. I think it's Amazing Spider-Man 419, something like that, where he appears in the last panel, and it's during that final arc of the Clone Saga and the Revelations 4-part crossover. So it's revealed in the Osborn Journal. I think it's Spider-Man the Osborn Journal how he survived. It goes into a bit more. There's a bit more depth in there in terms of how he survived, and it was the clone. It was the Goblin serum that healed him. So over time, he was rescued by his scryers, and then he healed over time. So he didn't actually die. So that was the explanation for that. People didn't want him back. People were very upset that they brought Norman back. They'd resolved one issue, which was the Clone Saga that had gone on
too long.
It's a tough one to argue that it had it gone on too long. Yes, so it had gone on too long, and then they went, okay, it's going to be wrapped up. And they didn't just go, let's wrap it up. They went, let's wrap it up and do something really controversial. Which is ballsy. So they brought back Norman Osborn. Again, one of those characters who you shouldn't bring back from the dead. 23 years. 23 years. And this is what I mean. People go in the revolving door of death. The revolving door of death has only really been around since about 2004, 2005. Before then, resurrections weren't that quick, if they happened at all.
It was more a DC thing that they would come back quicker.
Yeah.
Because I think just because like, and I don't know if I'll let you finish, but yeah, I feel like it was more DC thing. Marvel made it count.
what Marvel made it count?
deaths.
Like,
Like
yes,
like it lasted. Like there was a little bit more of a. I think after the death of Superman, you kind of just expected a comeback, maybe,
I think the 90s,
maybe.
though, there was quite a lot of that. Like, a lot of characters seemed to be killed and come back, or it would be implied. Like, Daredevil
I was
kind
gonna
of died for a bit, but didn't. And
I was gonna say that every character did this sort of like take away the one everyone knows, replace them.
replace him.
Thor's replaced with Eric's Masterson.
Yeah.
Spidey's replaced with a clone, or no, it's the real one all along. It's like
Batman and
all
Azrael.
my characters: Batman, Azrael, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman,
Superman and
Superman,
four
like
of them. What was Matt
four of them,
Murdock was
right?
replaced by himself. For real.
Like it just happened all across the board. I I think way earlier than that, Cap was replaced by the captain. Not that he died, but it's like the character you're looking for is not here, and they can't do what you expect them to do for various reasons, right? It was just the trend. It's felt like,
Yeah, it was a
and they
trend.
brought him back.
Yeah. It's very, very
But with
popular.
with like what you were saying, Norman, Gwen, Uncle Ben, it counted. It didn't even up to that point. Aunt May,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It was, man, Spider-Man has had some of the best and most controversial for one character. I think he's got the best and most like, what the hell? Why would you do that? Like, that's such a hack. But
Yeah. Some
I
interesting
guess
choices in there. I mean, in terms of this one, the reason why I've listed it in Best Resurrections, though, again, it's like making it count.
that's the key.
Was it a cheap shot to bring it back? I mean, you could argue that it was. You could argue it was gimmicky. It did cause a lot of upset. Were people talking about Spider-Man finally again? Yeah. So
Yeah.
it worked. The best part about it was that they made Norman the villain. So they brought him back, and then they made Norman the villain, not the Green Goblin. So
Interesting.
by
Right,
issue
because
250 of Spectacular Spider-Man, he'd bought the Daily Bugle. Like, how are you going to screw with Spider-Man? Funny enough, though, that idea is technically Peter David's. Because years earlier, Peter David suggested the Kingpin by the Daily Bugle, and they went, no, you can't do that. And he went, well, why not? Look at, they could do this with it, and you could do this, and imagine if that then happened. And they go, no, stop, you can't do that. And they're like, why not? Think of the story potential, and they didn't do it. And then years later, they did it, but it was Norman Osborn.
shame.
But it worked.
It worked.
Ultimately,
His
Peter David
character,
was right. Having a villain by the Daily Bugle and mess with Spider-Man in a very different way, and they introduced a new Green Goblin who was crap, but they served a purpose. He was trying to establish that he was never the Green Goblin, because there was a book released about him being the Green Goblin, so he had to kind of discredit that to fix everything. And that ran on for a bit. The ending of that period, not great. Like the final chapter storyline, not brilliant. There were some good stories that came later, like Another Death in the Family titled story was really good. And then jump ahead, and some people could shout down for this one as well, but he played a massive role post Civil War in 2007 when he led the Thunderbolts.
I was gonna say, like, his Norman Osborn became top 3 key villains in the Marvel universe for a number of years, where it's like, oh, that's a heavy hitter. Like,
Yeah.
oh shit, he's here.
Uh-huh.
Right, almost like a Lex Luthor level.
Yeah, he essentially filled that kind of role, didn't he? And I think the reason why people weren't keen on it is when you look back on the Green Goblin's original stories, he only ever fought Spider-Man.
Right.
So he was a Spider-Man villain.
Right. And then he becomes Tony Stark's, like him and Tony Stark are almost like a Daredevil Kingpin relationship, where this Spider-Man villain is now a key opponent to another character. Like they never were really, but now they are.
Yeah.
And you don't know, after it's all said and done, you're like, he has just as much vested interest to want to punch that guy in the face as Spider-Man does. Well, Spider-Man's girlfriend died, but it gets pretty intense. Yeah, why not?
You know,
I'll help you.
I'm just
Good pick.
Sorry, I was just trying to read the comment and my eyes aren't focusing. Most of the night is the way that Skyrim's relicate. Oh yes. So Mr. Bread says, apart from the wails of a newborn child, the thing that keeps me up most at night. The thing that keeps me up most tonight is the way that Scryer was relegated to just an Osborne flunky in a random cult. I'm just making sure I pronounce that clearly. His introduction with Judas Traveller was initially so intriguing. And yeah, that was disappointing. That whole Scryer thing was really interesting. And then it actually got even messier when they started playing with Scryer in Silver Surfer series, and they announced that Scryer was actually a whole other character. And the Scryer cult was based on that. It was like, this is why. It just got very messy. Which may have been J&D that did that, actually, funnily enough. But they can't all be winners.
No, there's a lot of story to be told with that same character. It's like you're going to have a lot of stinkers amongst all the good stuff, too. So that's what comes with the territory, Spider-Man.
Sadly.
Nice pick.
Thank you. Should we do a breaky break?
Let's do a breaky break. Let's do it.
Oh, I took the beats. You got to do the hip hop in.
I wasn't ready for the switch.
Oh, neither was I. Sorry about that. That threw me.
Okay.
And it was my mouth. So, new to the Omniverse. This week, we've got, for reading orders, we've got Transformers, 1984 to 1994, the Marvel years. So that covers Marvel's decade of running the Transformers series. It's not a massively complicated one. There is a Transformers compendium coming out very soon from Image Comics. It doesn't seem to collect the spin-off titles, but they'll probably be collected in Volume 2. They should sit slightly earlier. So it's a bit of a weird collection because Headmasters should sit in the new compendium. Have a look for yourself.
Is doing a Transformers compendium
of Marvels,
and they're Marvel stuff.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, really random. Cool. I don't necessarily recommend it. It's one for people who loved it the first time, and even then, it can be quite a tough read.
Okay.
I do plan on incidentally doing a Marvel UK version that will show whether presumably they're going to run the UK stories in a similar format. I'm hoping, but they'll probably collect them just the UK stories, so that will explain how those stories sit in between the US stories, if people care enough. Hopefully someone will, because otherwise it's a waste of my time. Also, we've got Death's Head, who is a Transformers character, one of my favourite characters. Marvel UK first appeared in Transformers, and this takes his history, and very convoluted history. He's a time traveller, so hey, this is how we do it. And I've put it into a logical chronological order. That's what chronological means, dingus. It did go to a point, I think, where it kind of went up to his death, even though there were stories later on the old version I had on the Marvel Comics Guide. This one tidies it up. He's still appearing now, so even though he's dead as of 1992, he's still been appearing because, of course, he's a time traveller. So yeah, I've taken all his bits, put them in order. If you're a Death's Head fan, I'm your best friend. Finally, we've got The Leap, which is a Nightwing storyline. It's a short one, but it's the one that kicks things in motion for the Titans and sets up their new status quo for the current Dawn of DC era, and that will lead us into Beast World. So, unsubtle hint there. I've read Beast World, which is the most modern crossover event from one of the big two I think I've ever read. I'm up to date with something.
Look at you.
I haven't read all the stuff in between, but I've read that. It was all right, actually. It's very silly, but it was all right. It wasn't mind blowing, but yeah,
you liked it.
I didn't.
It's all good.
Mind it. Yeah.
Nice.
Why not? Podcast and video. We've got top 10 most wanted DC omniverses. So we list our top 10 most wanted DC omnis. That's on YouTube, podcast platforms, all sorts. You can also jump on there and listen to our incoming May 2024 episode where we pick out our recommendations for the month of May in 2024. Exclusives, our first ever Who's Who Surviving the DC Universe entry. So if you subscribe to the omniversecomics.guide website, and you're a DC fan, that's the first episode of those. I've jumped into the old Who's Who. It's the equivalent of the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, so those Who's Who comics, and I'm A to Zing the key appearances of those random characters and seeing how they survive from the Bronze Age to post-Crisis to post-Flashpoint. Each entry will break things down. Some characters will only have 2 entries, some might only have 1. you know, in terms of like if they've been brought back or not. I'm loving doing the obscure stuff. But Abel is one of the characters that's recently been on TV. So he's in The Sandman. So he went from being a House of Mystery, House of Secrets host, doing those horror stories, to being a
I should give that show a
Sandman
try.
backup character, a support character. And then he's been brought back since in the post New 52 era. So
Cool.
it's a lot of work. That's it.
You're a gangster. I don't know how you do it all. Thank you, sir.
Gangster nerd. Gerd.
You're a gerd. A nerd.
The N is
All
silent.
right. Thank you for all the hard work, Mr. Dave.
It is a pleasure.
Are we back to the countdown?
Thank
Coming
you,
out of the
dude.
commercial break?
I think we're back.
There you go. That's what I was. There you go. All right. My number 3. I'm gonna go with another pretty obvious DC resurrection. I think this one was definitely taking place at the same time as the Captain America Bucky storyline was, and this is Green Lantern. Hal Jordan, Green Lantern. Now how it all goes down in regards to Hal Jordan dying, as we maybe not all know, but Hal Jordan kind of suffers a really, really bad bout of PTSD. That's to put it mildly. He gets overcome with a fear virus, if you will, that completely takes over his personality. But while it's happening, you think that it's just him going out for revenge and vengeance and to get his way, because he's literally lost everything after his city is destroyed during another storyline.
It wasn't even in his own book.
It wasn't even in his own book when it happened. And so obviously the grief, the sadness, the failure, everything that comes along with it, and being a Green Lantern Corps member, couldn't even save his own city, right?
Yeah.
Quite the story of revenge the quest that he goes on. He turns into this super villain, like uber villain. I don't know a super villain is obviously like a superhero's antagonist, a super villain. But in this case, he elevates himself to like, oh shit, this guy is like, he can take everything down with him now. But he redeems himself in the storyline called The Final Night. I think it's a 4 or 5 issue storyline, and he sacrifices himself. There you go. Very nice. There it is. How did you have it handy? That's beautiful.
Psychic.
Hal Jordan sacrifices himself as the villain Parallax to redeem reality, life in the universe, everything. So that's where he dies, and he goes out, I guess, as a redeemed character.
Yeah.
You don't have to go out hating this guy anymore. And then they bring him back in a storyline called Day of Judgment, which I did not read.
I read it.
But was it good?
It's by Jeff Johns. It's not his strongest moment.
Right.
If you just read the main 4-issue minis, it's there to bring Hal Jordan back. It's designed to bring him back, yeah.
It wasn't included in the Green Lantern Omnibus, right?
No, because it's too early. I mean, they could have done, but they didn't. So, I mean, technically, though, it's not a resurrection at that point because
he's the Spectre, right? He's brought back to be the vengeance, God's hand of vengeance, right? Spectre changes. It's a legacy character that changes who it possesses, the soul that takes over it. Long story short, he comes back in Green Lantern Rebirth, which famously leads on into the Jeff Johns, Peter Tomasi era of the Green Lantern Corps, the story, Blackest Night, Sinestro Corps, you name it. They thought it was so good and it sold so well that they said, let's make a movie out of this storyline, because this is the hottest character at DC. So needless to say, it's quite the journey that you'll go on reading this resurrection story and a true redemption story, because on the fall down, Hal Jordan has a lot of sins to answer for when he gets back to his right mind. And there's a lot of people that are part of the Green Lantern Corps who look at him and say, oh, really? Or even Batman, for that matter, is the least to trust Hal Jordan, who was, an original member of the Justice League and yada, yada, yada. He's like, yeah, no, I'm not I'm not feeling you. The rest of them might be suckers, but not me. So it's as
I love
interesting
it.
of a return to being a hero to also that self-discovery of like, how do I make things right with people? Great series. And I think it was taking place again same time as the Bucky storyline was going on. But again, this
Yes.
was maybe 10, not even 10 years that Hal Jordan wasn't dead for very long. He just was, his fall from grace was about 12 years, maybe more.
I can't
Something like
think.
that,
It was
right?
something like that. I think it was about 92, 93 when they did. Was it Emerald's Night? No, what was it called?
It would have been 90 Emerald Dawn.
Emerald
No,
Dawn.
Emerald Twilight.
Ah, right, right.
Emerald Twilight. Yeah. I think it was 92, 93.
Okay. Yeah, I think
Again,
you're right.
all these characters were, Batman's back is broken and Hal Jordan
Yeah,
is, everyone's
they were
changing.
breaking everybody, and then
Everyone was getting broken.
I think they brought him back in what 2005, 2006.
Yes, I think you're right.
So it was like it was a decent chunk. It was over a decade. And there was no
Yeah,
real intention to bring him back. Carl Rayner was quite merrily being the Green Lantern. He was establishing himself in JLA. Probably more so
that's
than his
right.
own book in some ways, people might argue.
Yeah.
But that's probably
Yeah, no,
where it
you're
was
right.
most famous. Like the stuff when I was reading about these comics, for the most part, it was through Wizard. So it was second
Yeah.
hand. But all the excitement was around JLA more so than the Green Lantern series. Um,
I wanna try his series, the Compendium, the Green Lantern Compendium, but there's just something about the
can I
when I flip
can I
through the
double it?
book, when I flip through that book, I've checked it out. I'm just like, I don't know how good this stuff is gonna be. Like, will I actually enjoy it, or am I just getting it to say I got it? Because I love Kyle Rayner as a character, and like you said, the stuff in JLA, like now I feel like reading Kyle Rayner stories, but great character. Similar, not quite on the same level, but like Wally West, where people who have been reading this character while he's being published, they're preferring him in that role. No need to switch him,
Yeah.
but needless to say, Hal Jordan being brought back as Green Lantern, it was definitely a game changer within the DC universe and publishing for that decade, for sure, man.
I think Jeff Johns had to kind of establish himself quite heavily to be able to be trusted to do something like that. By which point, I think he'd done JSA. It's so annoying. I had that Green Lantern book you're talking about right behind me earlier. I've moved something. Oh, I didn't know you had a. I didn't know you had a Hal Jordan figure.
I got a bunch of figures that are hidden in boxes that when I open them up, I'm like, oh man, I got that. That's cool.
Oh man.
I got
Oh,
Sinestro.
I really want one of those. I really, really want the Sinestro.
Your face got really red. Holy.
Did it?
Yeah. So-
That's because I climaxed.
There's Sinestro. Yeah. Anyways, that's my pick number 3.
Number 3. Marvelous. No, that is nice. If actually, no, I'm not going to say this yet. Nothing.
Okay.
Okay, that's grand. I loved that series so much. That was a great comeback. That was my first proper exposure to Hal Jordan.
Yeah.
You know, because I'd only read the guest appearance in Superman. At that
Yeah.
point, I think I read those stories first when he came back, so I didn't necessarily have the full weight of it, but you got enough to understand it. So even if you read
Hmm.
it only from the resurrection stuff from Green Lantern Rebirth, that's plenty. Pick it up
It's
and move
plenty.
forward from there.
It's true. It's plenty. You filled in with everything you need to know. It does the job.
Marvelous. Okay, so my number 4 tonight is an issue of Astonishing X-Men. So if you're going to read Interesting Man Joss Whedon's Astonishing X-Men run, this happens. And I was going to call him something else there, and I thought, no,
It's a great run.
not going to do that. So this is a fantastic run. It's if you have read it, you probably know who I'm going to be referring to. It's actually from Astonishing X-Men number 4, so it's from 2004. It's picking up from a death that was actually only 3 years earlier.
Is that it?
It felt a lot longer.
I thought it was longer. I thought it was a mid 90s death, but
I'm going to double check it because it's
I would, yeah, you would know
bothering
better
me.
than me for sure.
It feels I thought it was 90s. I was convinced it was 90s. Hang on.
It was. Yeah, it was 90s. But when did Astonishing X-Men get published? I'm very
So it was Uncanny X-Men 390, and that was 2001. Yeah. And in some ways, I think because it happened so fast, maybe that's part of the reason why it was so surprising. That and the fact that so I haven't actually said who it is yet. What they did when they implied someone was coming back is they released all these cover images, knockoff, like fake cover images that showed Phoenix related stuff. So everyone's thinking like, oh, they're going to bring back Jean. And when was Jean killed off? So that was at the end of Grant Morrison's run. So that wasn't that long before either. But they're showing all these Phoenix images, and then you pick up the issue and it's not. And that was one of those times where you could do that. Nowadays, they just go, yeah, do you know we're bringing this character back next month? You picking it up? You are? Yeah, lovely. All right, see you then.
don't miss out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to get in the 500 different covers you can get with it.
Yeah. Whereas like with this, and they did vary it. They did like 2 covers. But it was a surprise. So the X-Men have gone back to wearing their kind of more traditional superhero-y costumes as opposed to Morrison's run where they were all in black leather. And they break into this place where there's a cure for mutants. And what it seems they've done, so Kitty Pryde, who can become intangible, she gets spotted by guards. She's shot at, and from behind her, which should be an empty space, she hears like the bullets hitting metal. And she turns around, and there's the guy that she used to be in love with. Not when he died, but obviously he still carried a torch for him. That's a weird phrase, isn't it? I'm going to carry a torch for you. Is that all right? Where'd you want it? You got batteries? It's weird. I find that a weird phrase. Anyway, she turns around and there's Colossus, whose ashes she took to Russia 3 years our time earlier. She took his ashes back to his family. So it was still that strong connection with them, even though they weren't really together. He's there. He's alive. And then he runs through her. What a great moment. He runs through her, and then he goes and quite aggressively attacks these people. But when he turns around and he sees her, he says, and I had to find the issue to remind myself, but it's such a great moment. Again, I got a little buzz off that. He says, "Oh, you fucking ass." He doesn't say that. My computer's being such a dick tonight. I'm very sorry that it's being such a ball ache. Bear with me, callers. I just want to make sure I get this quote right. He falls to his knees and he says, God, please, am I finally dead? It's like, what? What's this? So it's a very strange thing. So what they actually, this is okay, major spoilery bit. What they did was, so it's been prophesied that a mutant from Earth will destroy the Breakworld, this alien planet. So the guy from the Breakworld, Ord, it comes to Earth and tries to find a way to end mutants, to take away their powers. In order to do that, they resurrect one who'd been killed, and they muck about with him. It turns out he's got the legacy virus in. So his death, Colossus' death in issue 390 of Uncanny, was a real heart-wrencher. And the way that they did it as well, where they used his first lines from his first appearance on those final pages, was like, oh, such a well-written issue. Scott Lobdell wrote it. Again, like, there's some controversy over Scott Lobdell in terms of, like, he was trying to write like Chris Claremont. By this point, he'd stopped trying to write like Chris Claremont. He was doing his own thing. Mm-hmm. And it's such a well-written issue. It's a proper tearjerker. And then this happens, and you're going, what the hell? So he resurrects Colossus. They used the legacy virus to create this cure for mutants, because he injects himself with the legacy the cure for the legacy virus, which was like, it was a metaphor for AIDS in many ways. And his sister had died from the legacy virus in Uncanny 303. So Ilyana was dead as well at this point. Another possible resurrection candidate there.
So,
that's right. Yeah, so he had
Rasputin family come back.
They don't have much luck, do they? Poor bastards. So they took the cure from him to then make the cure for mutants by dicking around with it. So they've been experimenting on him for all that time. And then he comes back, he rejoins the X-Men, and he comes back and he has to kind of reestablish himself. Is he going to get back with Kitty or not? what's going on? Where do we go from here? But again, like, I mean, ultimately, the highlights for me in my mind don't really stick there, but the moment of his resurrection is so strong.
Yeah, it is. It's a moment, and I remember it was spoiled for me because I was listening to podcasts that were just talking about like doing book clubs and things like that, and I started to use. I didn't care if the stories and things like that were spoiled. It was more like, where do I go if I want to find, is this a good place to read X-Men? Like,
Yeah.
is this a recommended story? And sometimes they would just do like a 6-issue portion, so they don't cover more than you could keep up with. But were describing this scene, and just the way it was described from others made me want to read it.
Uh-huh.
And even though I knew that what was coming, every time I get to that part, I'm just like, it's so good.
Yeah, it is really good.
John Cassaday,
Oh,
Joss
God.
Whedon, great pick. Great pick.
Well, it's a fantastic pick.
No, it's and not for obvious reasons. That's not why. It's just one of those moments where the resurrection is just like, I wasn't expecting that.
It's a shock. It's the genuine shock of it, and they played it really well. Because again, like resurrections weren't major at that time. It wasn't happening a huge amount, not really.
Right.
And then to have done it this way and to have played the audience and set the expectations up, and everyone thought they knew what they were getting.
Yeah.
No, especially if someone's saying, "Oh, someone's going to destroy the world," and then you think like, "Oh, it must be the Phoenix who's destroyed worlds." No.
And it's the reread value of it is still impactful.
Yeah.
Which doesn't always happen, right?
No, it doesn't always
Yeah.
happen. That's the thing. Even looking at it now, I've got the page on my screen, and it gives me the shivers,
The goosebumps.
the goosebumpage.
Yeah. Chicken skin.
Harsh.
Nice pick. Okay. Number 4. This
Yeah.
is fun. I'm enjoying talking about these stories, bringing back good
too.
memories. Okay. I love this storyline. I love this series. I've spoken about it before, and we've given this creative team their flowers a number of times. But going back into the Batman family, and again, it's not the same character, but the same character, and this is Robin, Damian Wayne, another Robin that Batman. This one is his actual son with Talia al Ghul. Spoilers. So Robin Damian Wayne gets killed in issue 8 of Batman Incorporated. It's the series that Grant Morrison continues to write about Batman after the New 52 is launched. So that's where Damian, goes bye-bye. But I would pick up reading the series. I didn't know how to
I've
put
never
it.
heard that dramatic moment described in that
Go
way.
bye-bye. Right? Bye-bye. Say
Bye,
bye-bye.
Damien.
Bye, Damian. Batman's gone through this before.
Yeah.
And like we mentioned, it was one of the most tragic things that happened to personally to him, his biggest loss. Now imagine his own son. So if you pick up the series in Batman and Robin 18, it's a bit of a commitment, but you read to issue 40.
Mm-hmm.
Robin Rises Alpha 1 and Batman and Robin Annual 3 covers the single issues that kind of... And the reason why I go so far back to the Batman and Robin issue 18 through to those mid-20 issues where Damian is no longer in the book, it's establishing what kind of a headspace Batman is getting into because of what's happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's changed. He's dealt with the Court of Owls in one book. He's dealt with the death of the family. He's lost his son. He's on a little bit of... And for me, this is where the titles at that time shift, where Batman and Robin as a title really pull ahead of the Batman book pack at the time. Because it's how desperate Batman becomes to correct this wrong. And it's a ridiculous premise that he has to go to literally the ends of the earth or other earths to do this. I
Yeah.
don't want to give too much away if you haven't read
Give it
it
away.
because
We can spoil here. We're talking about resurrections. Do it.
that's right. We're spoiling it. He has to go to not only deal with the Al Ghuls and go to Nan Parbat. Is that where
Nanda
Rachel is
Parbat?
from? Nanda Parbat, I think it is.
I think
He's
so.
not only dealing with that. The heroes are trying to stop him from going all out the way he's on a kamikaze mission to uh, not New Genesis. What is it? What's it called now?
Apocalypse.
Apocalypse.
Hmm.
He's going to Apocalypse, and he's outfitted and everything ready to
I've lost my
fight
Batman.
Darkseid. It's so good, so epic, so ridiculous, but
Doesn't matter. It's so dramatic, isn't it? It's just so dramatic. But it's the character change. And like you're saying earlier about Jason Todd, it's a completely different reaction, partly because of the actual familial connection, but it's not just that, is it? Because like he still took Jason Todd under his wing in the hope that he was, gonna do the right thing, and he was a good kid, and he just needed a chance. But Damien was something else. Like he was a murderous little bastard raised by assassins.
yeah, yeah, he was, and he's not really well accepted into the Bat family. Like he's got a the only one is him and Dick Grayson who
Mm.
kind of understand each other, almost being like the closest things to brothers,
Yeah,
if you will. But he's testy with everybody else, and I think Jason Todd comes along on the quest to bring him back,
yeah, he
if
definitely
memory
plays a part
serves.
in it because they did that thing where it becomes because it can't be Batman and Robin anymore, so it's Batman and Two Face for a bit. It's
Down
still
into
essentially
yeah,
called Batman and Robin, isn't it? And it's collected in the Batman and
yes,
Robin omnibus or however else you want to pick it up. But it becomes Batman and Two Face, and then it's like a Batman team up book to a degree. So they've kind
that's
of
right,
overtyped the Robin bit with Aquaman, Wonder Woman, whoever else he's
that's
teaming
right,
up with.
yeah,
Oh, this is so
and
weird tonight. I've lost my figures.
oh oh no.
I've got the Hellbat armor that he wears to rescue Damien.
Oh, that's wicked. Nice. Yes. Okay. So I was confusing a cover of the series, and I thought Red Hood was on the cover when they rescue Robin, and he's. But anyways, this character being brought back and the quest that Batman goes on, it's definitely not grounded in Gotham City sort of grungy reality, but
No.
it's okay. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's so good, and again, it makes you. Sometimes these characters are more appreciated when they're taken off the screen or off the page for a while,
Hmm.
and you can appreciate like, oh, that's why. And the other thing too is we're not talking about the deaths, but his resurrection, it means so much to the other Bat family members as well.
Yeah.
As much as they hated that little prick, when he comes back home, even like the dog is thrilled to see him. Like it's really good.
Yeah.
It's a great
Oh,
story.
there's a reason why we've talked about Batman and Robin by Gleason and Tomasi so many times in the past, and it's not a book you can really. I mean, you probably could pick it up from that point, but it's better to read it all the way through because then you really get the feel for why those two characters are so interesting together.
Yes.
So it's worth doing the whole thing, but we haven't specifically talked about that part of it because we've avoided spoilers probably for the most part.
Well, it's really what the book builds up to, right? Is to this
Absolutely.
thing. It's everything is about them getting to a point where will the characters go to save one of their own, especially one who's like not very likable because one, he's a child assassin,
Yeah.
and he's kind of always asking like, I just want a reason, like give me a legitimate reason to kill somebody again because I'm kind of itching. And by the end of it, you're just like, you know what? Save the kid. He changed. He's got it's just yeah. It's I don't know how to explain it, but it's that father son of like real father son. Like anything you could do, I could do better.
Hmm.
He's always trying to one up. Is like I was
Yeah.
trained better than you. I was trained since I was a child to be this guy. You taught yourself. Like I'm you plus them. Like
Yeah. And
it's
also
so
like a
cool.
complete I think it's the emotional part of it as well because it's like the impact of Batman on his death and it's the impact of Robin understanding how he feels about his own father and being able to feel about something for his.
That's right.
That's I think one of the bits
That's
for
it.
me as well.
That's it. Yeah.
Lovely,
Uh,
great choice, man.
thank you. Thank you.
Oh,
All right,
we
you're
we
number
need to fall
five.
out more. We don't have any conflict in the show.
I know.
Okay, my last one for tonight is it a cheat? Not necessarily. If you haven't read, so they're about to release Mark Gruenwald's Captain America run. I know I've had a Captain America tonight already. They're about to release Mark Gruenwald's Cap run. This story will be in it. It's not the longest, so in terms of the depth itself, it's a 3-4 parter. Ultimately, the actual death is, well, this is not just one character dying. This is a whole load of characters dying. So my number 5 is the victims of the Scourge. So Scourge of the Underworld was
I haven't read this.
essentially a serial killer. It seemed to be a serial killer. Am I going to spoil this for
Oh,
you?
I
Do you want me to not tell
no,
you?
I have.
You have.
I have. Yeah.
Okay. So he would go around randomly, seemingly killing supervillains. He first did it in Iron Man 194, which is 1985, and he killed off the Enforcer, I think it was. And he would sporadically appear and kill off a villain. So if you saw like a real CD list villain in a title, you could half expect them to die at some point over the course of that year and a half. It was very. He even tried to kill Kraven the Hunter, and he missed, and then he had to escape. So it was a very strange period. But he would just randomly show up and just shoot somebody, and he would say justice is served, and he'd disappear off, and he would be in disguise. So you never quite knew who it was or what was going on with this thing. But if you were picking up lots of Marvel titles at the time, you may have seen this, and it all culminated in this 3-4 part story in Captain America, and in particular, so that the end of the story was in 320, but the moment I'm talking about in terms of the deaths was Captain America 319. All the villains are talking about the Scourge of the Underworld. They go to the bar with no name. I think it's the first time the bar with no name actually appears, because there are multiple bars with no name, it seems. But they go to this one place, middle of nowhere, to discuss what to do about the Scourge of the Underworld, and it turns out it's the barman. And he just sprays them with bullets. He just kills all these characters, loads of them. And it was a way to get rid of all the crap D-list characters. Essentially, that was it. It's like, why don't we get rid of all the dross? Like, all right, we'll have them murdered. And it was pretty shocking. Like, this is mid-80s.
Mm-hmm.
So all these characters die. We're here to talk about resurrections. Now, this is where some people may go, are you for real? You're really choosing this? I am. And I'm choosing this from an entirely selfish point of view as a proper full-on continuity nerd. So, in the Brian Bendis New Avengers era, the first era of New Avengers that he did, he was bringing back characters to use in the Hood's army. And it looked like, and I saw some people comment this on other things, so it's not necessarily my words, but people going, he's just flicked through a Marvel handbook and just picked characters at random. But they're dead. This doesn't make any sense. There's no explanation. How are these dead characters coming back for the Hoods to join the Hood's army? There's been no sign of them being around. They haven't come back in the last couple of years and then popped up. It's like they're all just suddenly there. So the way they explained it was in Rick Remender's Punisher. And it was in the first story arc. The Hood is trying to, under Norman Osborn's direction, the Hood is trying to kill the Punisher. And he tries to lure him out by bringing back his family. Except the Punisher, and spoilers, if you're going to read the Rick Remender Punisher run, this is where the spoilers come in. Basically, Frank essentially makes sure his family don't come back. He's almost the one that kind of kills them again, or makes sure they stay dead. So that story arc ends. Microchip is back, who was another character who was killed off, who was Frank's best friend and his computer guy. So he's back. He's resurrected by the Hood. And it seems like the Hood can resurrect people. So what they do at the end of the storyline, it's this great double-page spread by Jerome Pena. There's loads of coffins. And the explanation as to why there's so many dead characters in the Hood's army is because he's been bringing them back from the dead. So it goes to some way to explain how he gets his powers. Because he just found this magical cape a while ago. It's actually the magical cape is powered by Dormammu, which was revealed just before. But anyway, let's not go into that because it's too complicated. There's a big circle of coffins, and all these villains that the Scourge of the Underworld killed off come back from the dead. And it's like, oh, okay, we have our explanation. What he does then that's
Right.
quite nice, though, is to make that make sense. He says, right, you're all back from the dead, and you can stay alive if you kill the Punisher. So they then have to go off. All these shit villains have to go off and find and kill the Punisher, which leads into the next story arc, which is Dead End, I think it is. It's a fun period. It does result eventually in the
It's
Punisher
a
being
deep
chopped
cut.
up and the Frankencastle storyline, but we're not touching that tonight. Just wanted to talk because I loved the Scourge of the Underworld stuff. So when I was a kid, I had those official handbook of the Marvel Universe trade paperbacks, and there was a great bit in the Book of the Dead. And if you're a bigger fan of the Book of the Dead issues as me, jump on the Omniverse Comics Guide, subscribe. We have a regular feature, semi-regular feature, where we spotlight a character from the Book of the Dead and let you know their history, what issues they were in, the key stories, and if, when, and where, and why they came back. But these were the Book of the Dead issues that talked about the Scourge's victims. And I would look through these heads just going like, who's that guy? What can they do? What's the deal there? And I loved it. And I had to go and track down those issues where they were killed and just to watch them die. What a psychotic little bastard I was. That's what Catholic upbringing does to you. So that was what I did. And then I think eventually then I read the Captain America issues, but like I was fascinated by this. They were just really random. I love low tier characters. And then what he does is he just brings these terrible characters back. Turner D Century, he's back. He rides around on a penny farthing. Ooh, watch out, Punisher.
That's
It's
hilarious.
just
But
silliness.
That's a deep cut. I like that.
Well, I thought like
Would
some of the
never have guessed that.
choices, they're going to be the big obvious ones because they're some of the best resurrections. I'm not a fan of resurrections. So the ones I've chosen, I mean it. I mean it. I love
Yeah.
these ones for whatever reason I've explained. The Scourge of the Underworld's victims, I love it because of the deep cut thing and the D-list villains and the explanation
Yeah.
as to why something that was basically a massive continuity error, why it happened. And that makes me
Yeah.
super happy. So that gets my nerd vote.
Yeah, that's great. Nice. Nicely done. Nice way to bring it on home.
Thank you.
Okay, my fifth one for the night. This is extremely obvious. I saved it for last, but it's also my nostalgia from childhood. It's the return of Superman, of course. I talked about the death of Superman last time. This can be collected, this portion of the story. Now I'm going to refer to all. This is a big chunk of issues. It's the stuff that is post the death of. So right after Superman goes bye-bye, gets the last punch from Daredevil, Doomsday.
Whoa, Daredevil's hardcore in that story.
Yeah, sorry, Doomsday. The letter D came to my head.
Could have been worse.
It, it, it's the scene right after, quite literally, where Lois is holding him. The next book continues right where the last punch took place. So, Action Comics 685 to 692. Including annual number 5,
Ooh.
Adventures of Superman 498 to 505 with the annual for Adventures of Superman number 5, Justice League number 70, Legacy of Superman number 1, Supergirl Lex Luthor Special number 1, Superman 76 to 83, and Superman the Man of Steel 20 to 26, and just to top it off, Green Lantern 46, where Post City kicks the bucket.
Oh.
So it's a lot of comics or different books if you wanted to get it single issue, or you can get it in numerous trade formats, and omnibus format. There's all kinds of ways to collect.
But it's quite high up.
Yeah. And I mean, the death clearly was a game changer as far as comic sales were concerned. It was on the news. But what was cool about the aftermath of it all was all the characters that got center stage. You got 4 new characters in the Superman universe that they created. The Daily Planet and all the side characters, you got to get to know them a little bit more. Lois's relationship with the Kent family.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Clark Kent's legacy as a reporter. Those type of things are explored. And then bringing him back, you get a whole bunch of tie-ins to the Kryptonian legacy that was being set up in the Superman Exile story. So it really brings a lot of things on home within the Superman universe, and not every story in it is gold. It's tons of comics being read, but it's the entire experience. And
Yeah.
the final showdown for me, again, as a kid, it was that moment. I was maybe 8 years old, 8, 9 years old. It was that moment where it clicked, like comic book connecting the pieces when it's like, oh, it's a callback to this cyborg is really this character that I have that issue
Oh yes, I remember. Yeah.
haphazardly, right? I didn't buy the first appearance of the cyborg knowing it was. So when he reveals himself, I was like,
Is that it?
what? The whole time, the whole time it was that character.
Yeah, it is a
So it
random
was one
choice,
of
isn't
those
it? But it's a payoff.
very random. Yeah, very random for him to be the real big bad. And again, Cyborg Superman becomes a real major villain within the DC universe. Like when you see him show up, he's a heavy hitter.
I've got a
So
question for you.
go ahead.
Of the four from Reign of
Mm,
Superman,
who did I
Reign of the
think?
Superman, who was your favorite? Because they're all, it's all very different motivations for everybody. But who was your favorite? And then
I
who did
think
you think? Yeah, that's good. That's probably a more sensible question.
I I didn't know. I thought it was Cyborg Superman. I thought that was their way of kind of explaining here's how he can exist.
Yeah,
It's going to be a different version of him, but it's him. And he's going to have like a weapons arsenal attached to him, and that's why he's kind of like a heavy metal rock star now, because he was killed, right?
yeah,
He was killed. So he's there, and at that time Terminator was like a real big thing, so like the look and everything was like kind of fitting, and his motivations initially seemed to be pretty like that's at least Superman motivations. The the one that was the last Kryptonian looked kind of the most like him, where you're like, well, he looks like Superman. There's no robotic pieces. He's not a kid. He's not a black guy in a steel suit. Like I
yeah.
never thought it was steel, for one.
No, that would have been
And he
controversial.
never, yeah, and he never made it seem like he was the Superman. He was just,
No.
I'm in his place because he saved my life and I'm gonna pay it forward.
Hmm.
So out of it, you get like a really great sort of Superman family that to this day those characters exist, and when they show up, they're pretty vital.
Yeah.
So, and then of course the actual comeback, like I mentioned, I think a few weeks ago, I don't know if it was Love Stories episode that we did where I talked about him
Yes.
returning to Metropolis, and in and all of that, there was an issue there. It was in Action Comics, I think it would have been 692, where the Adventures of Superman or the Superman, there's one part of the story that's Superman returns, but
Yeah.
then in the Action Comics, they take the time out to say, here's how we bring back Clark Kent.
Yes.
And I thought that was really well done for the way they use the characters. It's like problem solved. We never have to worry about the identity issue. Who's Lois with? Clearly, she knows both of them. She's in a picture holding, like, hugging both of these guys, and it was settled. It was like
Did they solve it in one issue?
one issue.
Yeah. I think, yeah. I can remember that. I can see the cover.
Yeah,
Here
Roger
it is.
Stern. Yeah, it was great. So, yeah, that's kind of what made me think about this episode in the first place, because that storyline is, a nostalgic favorite of mine.
Yeah.
But I like that issue with the Phantom Stranger and Supergirl, and how do we bring back Clark Kent into the story without it being weird that, well, Superman showed up and lo and behold, there's
Oh, I
Clark,
was in a
right?
cupboard for 3 months.
Right? Exactly. So a lot of reading, but it's always collected, always available. All of these
Yeah.
stories that I think we've listed are pretty easy to get a hold of.
Yeah,
I
you'll
think.
find them somewhere. If anyone's not sure, if you prefer collector editions, I'm probably going to be running the single issues on the cover on the in the graphics. But if you want to know where they were collected, let us know in the comments, and we'll steer you in the right direction.
There it
Give
is.
myself extra
Another
work.
top 10. You got some great picks, dude.
Yeah, that's nice.
That's
This is the thing. I don't think there's any major issue with talking about some of those bigger ones because, like, they're big for a reason. It's just which ones did work, and I think they're the ones that work. I mean, certainly, I'm not going to talk on your behalf, but obviously you would have chosen the ones you like. But that's what we're doing here. We're talking about the stuff we've loved, and these are the ones that have worked for us.
that's right. No, it's and it just makes you want to go again. You can spoil the outcomes of things, but really what it comes down to is how it's done
Yeah,
and where do they go after it, after the event, after the stunt, if you will.
yeah.
What happens because of it? So
With the
great,
Death and
great
Return of
stuff.
Superman, you can't really do it any other way. It's on the front cover of the
It's on the
book.
front cover, right? So it's all the how. How do we
Yeah.
get there? But of course, it's another podcast. Don't forget, guys, check out that omniversecomics.guide, like Dave mentioned before, for your reading guides. If there's a reading guide there, it's the best reading guide on the internet.
Shucks.
Yeah, and I'm not just saying that because Dave's here. I've seen
I'll
and
leave
used
the
a
room,
bunch.
and you can say what you really think.
I've seen and used a bunch for my own purposes, and yours are the best. But
Shucks, man. Thank you.
this was a good one. Good episode.
Yeah,
Lots to
good
talk about.
choice.
Lots to
Thank you.
reminisce on. Yeah, when we go long, it's because we're having a good time. So, right there you go. Easy, steady,
Oh, just
steady.
line them up, dude, and I'll keep hitting them. Come on.
All right.
I don't even need to finish that one off.
Good night, everybody. Dave, bid you adieu.
Double salute
Thank
to you,
my friend.
dude.
Double salute.
See you all next time, everyone. Bye-bye.